Good morning. Good morning. Welcome to, good morning. Welcome to day 3 of the Access Faith and Community Summit. We have been so enriched by all of our speakers and by all of our participants and the conversations that we've been having around how do we close this STEM equity gap in Black and Brown communities. And I was sharing during our last session on yesterday about how we have an opportunity to collaborate with faith-based organizations and community organizations to begin to build our capacity to reach even more youth and even more families. And so for today's session, I'm really excited to have with us today faith-based and church leaders who have experience on the front lines working in communities, also helping to build capacity of other organizations through leadership development as well. So I'm really excited about that. And so for those of you who are tuning in for the first time today, let me tell you a little bit about ACCESS. So ACCESS with a Y stands for the Association of Collaborative Communities Equipping Youth for STEAM Success. We are expanding our STEM acronym to include entrepreneurship as well as agriculture, as we look to expand our reach in not only urban communities, but also rural communities as well. And so we want to ensure that through our coalition that we have developed from a grant-funded project by the National Science Foundation, we've been able to pilot the ACCESS network, which has been centralized here in the greater San Marcos area or region. And really, we're in San Marcos, Texas, in between Austin, Texas, and San Antonio. So we're dead smack in the middle of the high-tech corridor here in Texas. And so as we look at expanding our reach, we host an annual summit. And our goal for the summit is to recruit new partners to join in this movement of engaging more Black and Brown youth in higher wage, higher skilled opportunities, as well as it's a great opportunity for us to provide professional development training. And then finally, we look at how we can continue to share the best practices and solutions that we offer. For today's session, we have with us our esteemed panel of guests. And I want to start off with introducing the moderator for today, who is someone I happen to know very closely, personally. It's my husband, Edward Lewis Hanson. I could say a lot about him. His bio is on the website. All of the bios for our guests are on the website, accesswithany.org. And one thing that he doesn't share often is that he also is a minister of the gospel. And so he's on our board, and he has just a gift at really being able to reach individuals through music. And so I'm really excited about him moderating today's panel. So without further ado, I would like to turn it over to Edward Lewis Hanson.
All right, well, greetings everyone, and thank you so much for joining this session. I just wanted to share a personal experience about the impact of community partnerships. Before I moved to Texas, I lived in Chicago, and I worked for a music conservatory that was a partnership with a Black and Brown community. They offered free lessons, piano, voice, violin. They offered a choral group, vocals, and dance. And so it was a nice collaboration of teachers who were skilled in these type of disciplines. And they were able to really make an impact in this community because a lot of the kids, were in a very difficult, tough situation. I remember my first couple sessions with some of the students, I would smell the alcohol on their breaths. You know, I would sense some of their children have been abused, but this was such an outlet for the children to be able to come and be able to use all of their creativity and vent even some of their frustrations and turn it into artwork, you know, something beautiful. And these children were exposed to some of the best world-renowned classically trained musicians, as well as being exposed to master classes from some of the jazz greats. And I was very blessed to be a part of that, because I also got an opportunity to be able to watch children actually have something positive to aspire to and dream for in the future. And so with that being said, I still have some contacts with some of my students that I taught for over 10, 20 years ago, who are still saying to me, Mr. Hanson, you know, I'm now majoring in piano in college, or I'm considering becoming, a music director. And so it's just those little seeds and that impartation that we can give into students that can, or Black and Brown communities that can make such a difference. And so with that being said, I want to just go right on in to our speakers and allow them a chance to share with our questions that I'm going to have here. And I also wanted to say that I have a personal connection with each of our panelists, speakers here. And I'm going to just start by saying with Reverend Esperanza, if you ever are in the community during Lenten season, please stop by and get a delicious fish dinner, because they make the best fish dinner this side of San Marcos. Okay.
I just wanted to welcome everybody and let you know if you have any questions throughout the session, if you want to type them into the chat box, I will be keeping track of them so we can ask them all at the end, just to give y'all that note. Yeah, so we're also recording all of our sessions and we're working on editing those to streamline them a little bit. And we will be sharing a link for that once we're done, especially for the first day. We know there was a lot of issues, so we want to make sure everyone has a chance to view all of this amazing sessions that we've had.
Okay, everything starts when our own children are leaving their beloved home, where they have spent their whole life, and commence a new decisive journey that will be critical for their success in every aspect of their life. And we all here are convinced and agrees with Nelson Mandela's quote, "Education is the most powerful weapon which you can use to change the world." Here in the United States, we can easily identify some personalities that share the same thought regarding how important is the education for our children. Oprah Winfrey quote, "Education is the key to unlocking the world, a passport to a freedom." Today's subject is faith-based organization to facilitate science, technology, engineering, and mathematics area, enrichment programs in your community. What is the Methodist Church approach to this subject? Let's first go back to the Industrial Revolution, times 1760s. This is when manufacturing industry was gradually growing thanks to the invention and use of diverse types of machinery. A clergyman named John Wesley became known around this time, and the later on was known as the social reformer. John Wesley noticed that due to increase the science, technology, and longer working journeys, the society moral and spirituality was severely decreasing. Are you agreeing that? Classroom in an abandoned foundry. And while parents were attending long working journeys, he was teaching to kids on how to read and write. His own conviction was that education was the foundation for progress. He did learn this at home. Despite taking care of a large family, his mother set a rule that from their 5th birthday for each one of her children, she will spend every day teaching to read and write using her Bible. This was their home school, and it did last until they start attending university. Back in February 1736, John Wesley set foot in Georgia soil, arrived at Savannah. To date, there is this church founded by John Wesley in Savannah. This is the first school for boys and girls, and his motto was to build a school next to the church. Nowadays, the Methodist Church eagerly continues promoting the education as a foundation for material, physical, and spiritual progress. Here in San Marcos, when passing by the university on Guadalupe Street, you may have seen this ad. And this is the building. Well, sometimes students make teams of volunteers to pick up the garbage from the river or just to socialize and eat peanut butter sandwiches in the United Methodist place. Building, there are always coffee, bread, and cookies available for any student who wants to have a break, study, or just socialize with others. Sometimes I am there in the case someone wants to practice Spanish or need to assistance on this subject. We believe that our students, although they are immersed in technology, science, engineering, and mathematics, it is also necessary that they grow spiritually. Reverend Salmi guides them in worship service and Bible studies. A fellowship and friendship environment is achieved with everyone's cooperation. This is the First United Methodist Church next to small HEB. At the First Methodist Church, they have a program named Adopt a Student. When the students attend the worship service, a family invites him or her to have a lunch with them and spend a little time with family. There is another great program named the Church Mouse that consists in, without the student knowing whom the church mouse is, along the year, the church mouse gives him small gifts and encourage him or her to keep going. When the school year ends, they discover who their church mouse was. And we try to teach them about God is, about you to bless you. below you to support you, before you to guide you, behind you to protect you, and beside you to comfort you. By the grace of God, I have the opportunity to serve at El Buen Pastor United Methodist Church, and in here, we also support the students. As I told you, sometimes I go to practice with them some Spanish or help them in the exams and coexistence. And sometimes we donate 120 lunches or more for students, because every Monday at noon, they offer a lunch for all students who be there. You can see after service, we are talking with students, and that day, of course, it was before the pandemic because we have not masks, and we offer lunch them and family time together. And our purpose is sharing God's love, growing in faith, and creating community. This is our purpose and our desire as a Methodist in this place. Thank you.
Again, Reverend Esperanza, thank you so much for that heartfelt presentation. And it's, you know, faith-based communities, organizations, they really are the bedrock of our communities. And it's so important that we, you know, really support and pour into them, because they have a way of being able to reach out in many different aspects in communities in ways that, you know, others cannot. And so we thank each and every one of our panelists. And so the next panelist on I would like to have is Pastor Lauren. And I do have a connection with Pastor Lauren because she's one of the pastors at the church that I currently attend. And so it's a blessing to have her here. And so I am going to go ahead and turn it over to her and allow you to introduce yourself, and then we will ask some questions. And so I think I'm kind of doing this a little bit unorthodox. And so before Pastor Lauren, you speak, I'm going to introduce Corey Tabor. Okay. So Corey, thank you so much for joining. And I do have a connection with Corey as well through my wife. And Corey is an innovator and an entrepreneurial heart. And so he has so much to offer communities. And so I look forward to hearing them as a dialogue with some of the questions that we're going to talk about today. Okay, so why don't you both just give a brief introduction, and then we'll ask the questions. So Pastor Lauren.
Thank you so much for having me on. I am a pastor here in San Marcos, Texas. I grew up in San Marcos, and so have a close connection with the community. My husband and I pastor a church called Sozo Church. We are a 5-year-old church, and our mission is to be a family on mission representing Jesus to the world around us. And so our desire really is to activate our people to reach the city and the region for the kingdom of God. And so part of that is really to see God's kingdom advance in people's lives and approach people through a holistic salvation approach. And so that not only would we teach them the good news of the gospel, but that there is a life in heaven on the other side, but that people actually would step into their purpose and see their kingdom calling happen here on earth. And so that's what I spend a majority of my time doing. I also am a small business owner. I own an interior design business. And I have 3 small children, 7, 3, and almost 1. So I stay very busy leading and running a business and mothering my kids. So I'm really honored to be here and just to share just how Sozo Church has done this in our organization.
Thank you, Pastor Leonard. All right, and so Corey, give us a brief introduction and let us know a little bit about you and what you're doing right now.
All right, well, good morning, everyone. My name is Corey Tabor. I'm the founder and president of Triple I Coaching, which stands for Inform, Instruct, and Inspire. That's our mission, is to inform, instruct, and inspire people to fulfill their purpose. So my background has a lot to do with serving in ministry as a staff pastor at a large church in Austin, planted a church for 9 years. I've also served as a program director for a sexual risk avoidance education program here in Central Texas, and currently focusing on coaching and consulting and really helping people think through how to align with their purpose. So similar to what Pastor Lauren said, I really believe we all are wired to do something that God placed in us from an early stage. And like he tells Jeremiah in Jeremiah 1, before I formed you in your mother's womb, I appointed you as a prophet to the nations. There are certain gifts, abilities, natural abilities, acquired skills that we have that God has given us to be able to effectively accomplish what we were sent here to do. And so I really believe that churches have a great opportunity, and nonprofits, community organizations have a great opportunity to be able to partner to position our communities to advance. And so I'm really excited today to have the opportunity to share and connect with each of the individuals on the panel. And hopefully what we share today can provide a blueprint and a kind of a passport to move you from where you are to where you want to be in accomplishing this goal.
Thank you, Corey. All right, I'm going to go ahead and start with question number 1. Okay, so the first question is, how does your organization engage with youth and families in the community?
Well, we, for the past 5 years, have been engaging. I mean, we engage our church family in a way that our desire is to move even just the people that are part of the members of our church forward. And so helping them discover that purpose that God put in them, and helping them advance personally in their own lives. And then also to take those people and to equip them on how to reach the city that way. And so we have been engaging a certain community for the past 5 years. It started with the flood back in 2015, whenever the church was planting. There was a big flood in San Marcos. And so we went into this neighborhood just to serve the neighborhood, to feed them and help them clean out their homes, which then started a relationship with the people in this neighborhood. And so since rebuilding their neighborhood, our people have been going into this area. It's a neighborhood, and then next to it is also a housing authority, some government housing next to it. And so our people have been going in weekly, engaging these families through serving them in after school programs. Through COVID, they have gone daily and fed and been the go-between between the school district and these neighborhoods to feed these children. And so they've been engaging them relationally and just building trust with these families and these youth, and helping them with homework. And this is also the neighborhood that we did our STEM VBS in 2 summers ago. And so really it's just for us, we really established relationship first, and then as we're allowed access into these families' lives, bringing extra resources to help advance these families. But that is mainly where we're activated now. In the past, we've had an after-school program once a week. It was called Sports in the Park in the Dunbar neighborhood, where we played sports with kids. And it really started just with a family that lived in that neighborhood who would see kids outside after school. The kids would come and knock on their door and want to play sports with them. And so they would just play sports with them. And through that relationship, they began after school discipleship and after school mentoring, feeding at Thanksgiving. We would do a big meal. And so really our approach is really organic, just being in neighborhoods, using whatever resources we have to reach those families in that community.
I would say with Triple I coaching, in my background, all that I've worked with as a staff pastor at Greater Mount Zion, a lot of our work was focused on equipping people to discover their purpose and helping support parents and being able to be effective in serving their students. Something about a parent knowing what they're called to that gives them the ability to pour that back into their students and their children. And then as a sexual risk avoidance educator with Lifeguard, we were able to really help students understand, one, that delaying sexual activity is not just staying away from engaging in sex, but it's also finding what they're passionate about and pursuing that and being able to see their future beyond the moment and look at it long term. And so I think a lot of times students are really focused on where they are individually right now in the moment, because their prefrontal cortex hasn't fully been developed. They think about the immediate as compared to the long term. So being able to give them the tools they need to have all of the developmental assets needed to effectively make choices so that they have an advantage in moving forward in accomplishing what they want to accomplish. And then if they have made poor choices earlier in their lives, how do we help them recover from that? And then as a pastor for the church that we launched with Full Life Community Church, a lot of it was being able to be available to kind of partner with other organizations that wanted to be able to use space, but also being able to create a family-friendly church where people had the ability to be not only in the worship experience, but have enough space outside of the worship experience to get to know their neighbors and connect with their families as well. So many people who have been engaged in church experiences have found themselves so engaged in church that they can't be connected to their neighbors. And so I think it's important that churches do, as Pastor Long was talking about, have the ability to balance that, where folks in the community know that you're available to be able to serve and connect with them and build relationships with them. And so throughout my background and experience, those are kind of the ways that I've seen the ability to be able to engage with youth and families in the community.
Pastor Lauren. Thank you, Pastor Lauren and Corey, for sharing. Our next question is, Reverend Esperanza, would you like to expound upon that question?
Our church is almost for old people, but we look outside. It is the reason we especially want to host students, because as we have not young people, we want to help another, and we want to, they feel the warm family, because while they are here, they miss their own family. And we as a church want to be their family for them. Yes. And another hand, we are engaged in the community for homeless. Every Sunday we give breakfast. Even now in pandemic, we continue giving breakfast to the homeless. And if I see people who are needing, for example, before maybe an hour ago, there were a person homeless. It was without shoes. And I came and I looked for shoes and I gave him. And we want to show the love of God for the people. And we are sharing food too. And we have a group for 31 old people who they can go out to buy groceries. And every week we take food them to their homes. So we try to serve the community, old and young people.
All right, thank you for that, Reverend Esperanza. All right, so our next question is, what benefits or assets do churches and faith-based organizations provide for youth and families in the community? And so we'll go again in the same order. Pastor Lauren?
Yeah, I think Reverend Esperanza said it beautifully, that, I mean, one of the greatest assets that I think a church is to the community is a group of people who have a desire to serve the community. I mean, that is the greatest asset. Like, to have hundreds of people coming together who say, I want my life to be used as a tool to better my community, to love my community, and to be able to tap into the benefits of having a held audience that has said, yes, we will be used for God's purposes, to see lives advance, to see lives increase in quality. And so I think that is a huge asset that the church carries. And really, I think historically we've seen just the pastors or the leaders of the church as the key holders to have access to the community. But really, our approach is that everyone in our church is a minister. Everyone in our church has the ability to love for, to pray for, to invest in people in their community. And actually, we realize that our people have access to networks and communities that we do not have access to as pastors, that we actually have engineers in our church, or math teachers in our church, or scientists, or people who are actually out in the STEM industry that we as pastors do not have access to. And so to have an engineer that has the knowledge and the resources to invest, and then a willing heart to say, I can take this understanding that I have, and I can impart it to my community, and I have a desire in my free time to give it away, is a great asset that the church has. And so I think the great asset of the church is people. It is the people, the willingness, the heart, the desire to give what they have away. And we really see that in our church. We have an engineer in our church who served through our VBS, and then started to build relationship through that. And then afterwards went back and did an after school program with students in that neighborhood, teaching them aeronautics. And so he took them out to the San Marcos airport and showed them, he flies an airplane, and taught them about flying airplanes, and took them up in the airplane. And so he took it as his own personal mission to expose these students to this whole field. Another way is Lydia, who was a major asset in our church. So we were going to do a STEM VBS, and she has a desire to work with kids, and she understands how to build curriculum. And so I went to her and said, how do we do a STEM VBS? And so by just tapping into her as a person, we were able to create a whole VBS curriculum that connected with this neighborhood. Another way is we have a young girl who grew up in a really hard family life situation, and her desire is to just love on underrepresented kids. And so she is just a natural, just a friend to kids who live in these areas, and she just goes in and does tutoring with them after school. And so really the church's greatest asset is its people and their willing heart to love their community.
Wow, that is so engaging, Lauren, as you share that, because there's so much of what you shared that I was thinking of. One of the things that I've come to understand is that exposure often is empowerment. As a kid growing up, I didn't know you could be an engineer. I didn't know you could be a business owner. I knew preachers and teachers. And so I went to college to get a degree in education. And I got called to preach as a freshman in high school. But I think that if I had been exposed to entrepreneurship earlier on and known people who own their own businesses or have been exposed to engineering. I don't think I'm wired to be an engineer, but if I could have seen that there is a pathway for people who have people skills in the IT community to be able to use those skills to advance their career, it would have given me some other options to think about. So I think for many underrepresented communities, exposure is really important. One of the challenges with the way our government often provides public housing and public education is that it limits exposure to different experiences where people get locked into seeing people who are in one form of life, whether they are, you know, folks who are working in the hospitality industry or people that are maybe engaged in behavior that isn't, you know, legal, so to speak. And so when we as a community or as a church begin to expose individuals to opportunities that maybe they wouldn't have been exposed to, then it gives them a chance to really begin to dream and think about, I could potentially be an engineer one day. What Pastor Lauren shared about this pilot who's an engineer, these students riding in a plane, maybe somebody said, man, I could go to the military and work on helicopters. Or I could, you know, become a pilot in the Navy and eventually become a pilot for an airline. I have a friend that did that. That started out as a journalism major, and he ended up discovering architecture, which led him to drawing, which led him to aeronautics and that type of thing. So I think exposure is really important to give students the ability to see what they can be. I also think it's important to not project onto young people our challenges or our biases. So for example, I wasn't strong in math and science growing up. I mean, I took AP classes in high school just to be advanced and try to be able to challenge myself. But I can't project onto my daughter math is a bad thing. I need to be able to communicate to her that math is good, that science is good, that these are ways that you can grow and develop your mind and your experience in order to be able to consider progressing academically. I need her to see other women like Shatay who are in the technology field to understand that you don't have to be a man to lead in this field, or you don't have to be a person who's white to lead in this field. The exposure to various individuals in the technology realms is very important. The other thing I will say is, as Pastor Warren said, is that the people that are around our students is very important to say, hey, these are folks you can connect with, people who can be a mentor. And the third thing I think that churches have that's huge is something that Reverend Esperanza is taking advantage of is the facilities that you have. So you may not have the skill set to teach this, but you may be able to open up your church to be able to use it as a space to offer an after-school program or to offer a mentorship program or some sort of robotics club. I'm seeing the facilities that churches have are really valuable when they do have those facilities, and often they're used on a Sunday morning and maybe a Wednesday evening, but throughout the week, there are other ways that we can show young people and use our resources as our facilities are available to be able to make a difference in the community. So those are some things that I've been thinking about related to how churches and nonprofits and community organizations can partner to grow STEM communities.
And as I told you before, our church is very engaged at the student community because we believe that they need to grow up in science, technology, all things, but it's necessary, don't forget the spirituality. It is the reason we share with them our friendship, our warm family, but especially we want to share with them the love of God. And we offer them, as you told before, we offer them the space. When we have a fish fry, unfortunately during the pandemic, we couldn't continue offer this service to the community and enjoy this fish fry. But usually we have 20 or more students. They help us to serve the plates or to take at another places. And it is good because when we finish, we share all together our own fish fry. And it really is, we enjoy with the students and the young people with them.
Okay, thank you all so much for sharing just some very key ingredients just to make a community thrive. Some great takeaways for me was just the benefit as people. I mean, what a profound thing that an investment that we have in the people that are right there in our faith-based communities. And then the other powerful example was exposure. And I definitely can agree with you, Corey, because the exposure I experienced as a child, watching my mother listen to classical music or taking me to a concert, you know, I mean, I would have never thought, you know, as a brown person that I would, or a black person, I should say, I'm brown, but but being able to see these world-renowned classical pianists play these huge Rachmaninoff pieces or Tchaikovsky, and just to have that aspiration, that being exposed to that, and actually having the experience to be able to do it myself. So very profound. And then the facilities, because even if you may not be able to teach mathematics or technology, opening up your facilities to allow for after-school programs, for mentorship programs, or tutorial programs. So just some great information there. So we're going to move on to our last and final question here. And it just says, what resources are needed for churches and faith-based organizations to engage youth and families with STEM education?
Yeah, I think one of the greatest resources that even just being a part of this ACCESS network, yesterday that has just informed me on how to do this. Yesterday during one of the sessions, we mapped our assets. And so Shate asked questions, what are the assets in our community, excuse me, that we can connect with, that then we could create a map so we know what is out there that we can have access to, and how can we be the bridge between between people and organizations. And so I think in our own organizations, what is needed is our ability to map our own assets. And so as a pastor of the church or my nonprofit organization that I lead, I need to look at what I have at my fingertips and to map that asset and say, okay, how is this person, this engineer in my church, an asset? And how can we begin to cultivate in this person the vision to reach this group of people? And so I think one tool that we need is, as leaders, is to understand, how do I map my assets? How do I take a survey of my people? And then how do I activate them to reach their community with their God-given purposes and gifts that He's been giving them? And I think also just understanding just support from other churches. And so I think to see the different churches in the community as assets, as not as my enemy or as my competitor, but actually as my friend in this advancement of reaching our community for the sake of seeing them lifted up. So I think there's a need for networking among churches, because I know that Pastor Esperanza can reach a whole different community of people than I can. And so to see her as a co-laborer in this effort, and so what I need is a resource on how to connect with her. And this ACCESS network is a way to do that. I would not connect with her otherwise. And so this really provides a way. And so we need networking opportunities. Something else that we need are just manpower. And so many times we think, oh, we just don't have enough people to get the work done, or we don't have enough resources to get the work done, but really to see how can even the people in my church maybe live in the neighborhood that Pastor Esperanza's church serves. And so how can I connect even my people with their efforts so that they can have added manpower, added volunteers to whatever effort they're going after. I know the neighborhood that we did the VBS in, we actually have a family that from our church that lives in that neighborhood. And so they were willing to volunteer their time to serve that community. And so there's a need for volunteers. There's a need for connection, networking of volunteers. And I think practically they're like with our doing our VBS, or our desire is to have an after school program one day, a functioning after school program. We don't have a facility right now, but curriculum to use with those students. Whenever we went to do our VBS, I know that there is VBS material out there and that there's STEM material, but we need resources for like curriculum that we can use in our after school programs, in our VBSs. And so I think there's a need for development in that. I am not good at writing curriculum, but Lydia is. And so she was able to write ours. And so, or even a need for people who have access to that curriculum or to those resources to bring that into the ACCESS network so that we can have access to it. That I know for me personally, I'm saying I have a need for that. And so if anyone is watching and has access to that, I would love for you to share in the chat on that. Oh yeah, VBS is Vacation Bible School. So usually a summer camp. So it's usually a summer camp that churches put on. Thank you for that comment in the chat. So I'm going to pass it on to Corey.
Thank you so much, Pastor Lauren. One of the resources I think churches and faith-based organizations need to engage youth and families with STEM education is a vision to move beyond just discipling people in scripture, but discipling them in life, whole life discipleship. When you think about it, Jesus found Peter initially on a boat fishing, and he connected his skill set as a fisherman with his ability to share the gospel. And I think a lot of times as churches, and I know as pastors in the past, it's been very easy to say, what do we need to do to get people to follow Jesus as their savior? But not understanding what do we need to do to help them see beyond just their faith experience, but how does their faith experience connect with their life as a whole? And so I think the vision to say, what can we as a church do to expose people to these opportunities, to not create competition between math and science and faith. The two go together. God is a God that is creative. He's a God that is expansive. He's a God that has an amazing intellect, obviously, to be able to build and create what we are experiencing today. And so vision to see beyond just the Sunday morning experience, but to see how the church can be impactful in the community. My belief has always been that if a church is in a community and that church were to leave and it doesn't affect anybody, it's not been effective in its calling, because we are called to be missional in the community and to serve those around us. The second thing I would say beyond vision, which the Bible says, without a vision, the people perish. Without having something bigger than ourselves to focus on, we lose focus and we lose the ability to maximize. Second thing is relationships with organizations that are already engaged in STEM. So I'm thinking about many churches are looking for organizations to reach out to them, but the church and the faith-based organization could reach out to these companies. We live here in Austin. I live in the Austin area. Every company in this area that focuses on technology, has a community program where they're trying to use their skills and abilities to serve the community. Samsung does a number of things in the Manor area, providing tablets, providing mentors, that type of thing. So I think every church should go to these major companies, to Dell, to Samsung, to a National Instruments, and say, you know, how can we partner with you to expose people in our community to the field that you're working in? And many of them are compensated or are able to give grants or donations based on the amount of time that their employees volunteer in the community, because every company has a social impact component now. And so I would encourage churches and faith-based nonprofits to go into these organizations and say, hey, what can we do to partner together, to work together? Could we offer a career expo at our church? Could we offer a demonstration of coding? Could we offer an ability for you to provide some of the kind of hardware we need? You know, maybe it might be computers for an after-school program, or being able to offer tablets for the vacation Bible school that may be happening. And then the third thing, obviously, is our finances. Often vision is the heart of ministry, but money is the muscle of ministry. And you can have a passion and a desire to serve your community, but without the financial resources, it can be challenging. So being able to partner again with these companies and say, hey, would you be able to offer a grant or some sort of resource financially to help us implement it, or being able to get donations. Many companies do matching to nonprofits. And if the church can set up like a community development corporation or a nonprofit outside of the church that is partnering with the church, where many of the challenges that are connected to companies donating to faith-based organizations can be alleviated, it can provide a funnel for financial resources to be made available to implement this type of programming. So vision, relationships, finances are three things that I think could be significant in resources provided for STEM education.
Okay. Sometimes when we think what we need, first, we think in money resources, economic resources. But I have the experience as a leaders, we have first to be united, because when we are in union, in same team, in same thought or same goal, we can see same vision. For example, our church, El Buen Pastor, maybe you know, it is not a rich community. All people is retired, so we have not many resources. But even that, every Sunday, we are giving food, very good breakfast. Sometimes it is better than in a restaurant. And they have fruit, juice, tacos, or anything. Sometimes they are bread calientito, recent fresh, okay. But it is only with the help for another churches. The First United Methodist Church give us 2 Sundays at the month. The Adventist Church is giving us another Sunday, and Will Church, something, is helping us too. So when we work together, the rest, God made that. Thinking in that, God is awaking our hearts. And I think it is very good opportunity to work together in the name of God, I think.
I just want to say thank you so much for this discussion. It was very engaging, and just some great resources and information readily available. So thank you all so much for your insight. I also wanted to mention that the ACCESS Network is a great resource for faith-based and community organizations. And so with that being said, I know that we do have a number of questions in our chat box. I want us to be able to kind of, focus on some of the questions right now during our Q&A session, and then also maybe bring in some of the points for the ACCESS network, and how that some of those needs can be met. Okay. All right. So Lydia, I think I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to you to, look through some of the questions on the chat box. And then if our panel speakers can be ready just to kind of interject and speak, on some of the questions.
All right, awesome. Just a reminder for anyone, if you have questions, you can feel free to keep adding them to the chat or on the Facebook if you're watching on Facebook Live, and we will add those in. So the first question I have for the panelist is, someone asked, as a new member to a community, how can I start engagement with youth and families? What do you recommend as those first steps?
Well, I'll say as a person who tends to be an entrepreneurial mindset, a starter, one of the things I encourage people to do is partner with existing organizations like ACCESS, like local churches that are currently operating. It's so easy to want to start something when it may have already been started, and your skill set can be used to supplement or support as compared to recreating the wheel. So I recommend doing some research to see what is already going on in your community and coming alongside and learning the community before trying to establish something new in the community. So as the pandemic is going on, sometimes it's really challenging to physically get face-to-face with people. I know I'm doing some community engagement for a school right now, and a private school, and trying to engage parents or teachers or students is really challenging in a physical way, but being able to do some of that virtual research, making phone calls, finding out what's already going on in the community is really, really helpful, which is a part of what that asset mapping is that Pastor Lauren was talking about. It gives you a chance to really see what is already happening in the community. And then I would encourage you to partner along with people who are already engaged in serving the community.
Awesome, that was great, thank you. Anyone else want to throw in any more suggestions?
Yeah, I think that is great, Corey. And something you said earlier that really just caught my attention was vision. And so I think going in to engage a community, finding what the assets are, and then really working on your own personal vision. What is your vision for engaging the community? And then finding an organization that, like you said, already exists, that has the same vision that you have, or finding an organization that where you could add your vision to would be a great first start.
Awesome, thank you. Reverend Esperanza, would you like to add anything else?
Yes, it is good to have a vision, and we can start together because if we don't forget our roots, we can grow up very, very strong as a community.
I'd like to thank everyone for participating in this segment.
Do we have any final remarks from the panelists?
Yeah, I just want to say that this is a great opportunity for organizations, and faith-based nonprofits to begin thinking strategically outside of their comfort zone. One of the things this pandemic has taught us is that it's important to pivot during this time period and figure out what is it that we can do to impact people right now. And there are so many ways that technology is changing the way we do life. And so if we can begin to equip young people and even people in my generation to think strategically about how they can use those skill sets and build those skill sets, it's going to help them to be able to make a huge difference. I think one of the things we don't think about sometimes with the churches and nonprofit is who you invest in today could be a major partner in the future. Think about a teenager who is learning and getting exposed to technology now, who may go on to create an app that becomes very successful, that allows you to have the resources to build that wing in your facility, or somebody who, you know, becomes an engineer and has the financial resources to be able to support an after-school program. And so we have to have the long-range view of whoever I'm investing in today is going to make a difference, not only in my life, but in the lives of other people down the road. I'll share this kind of as a final example. In the 5th grade, I had a teacher who invited me to go to a leadership camp at a local college in our city. And my parents always had told me that I was a leader, but it's not until somebody outside of your family speaks that into you that often you really see yourself that way. And so I began to step into leadership because someone called it out in me. And there may be individuals in your community that you begin to expose to this content and speak into their lives to say, you know, you really have a knack for putting things together. You really have a knack for tearing things apart. Like, you're really interested in how things function. Could there be a future in your life that is connected to these type of careers? And you never know how that would really open up someone's heart and mind to consider it and begin to see themselves as someone who can make a significant difference. So never underestimate the impact we can have to speak into someone's life and kind of call them to something greater than what they may have seen before.
That's really good. That's good. Thank you for sharing that. I think for me, just to encourage you that you are the light of the world. And in the pandemic, it may seem like things are getting worse and that we are on the losing team. But I think that God really does, as church leaders, have the greater things are yet to come. And so I think he has just creativity and new ideas waiting on the other side of this. And so I think just taking this time to really reimagine what it could look like to reach our people and our communities in new and creative ways. I think even starting to look at the leaders in our church and the ministries that we offer in our church in a different way. Children's ministry, not just a place where we babysit our kids, but actually, like what Corey was saying, that we would see the natural tendencies in our children and how their brains are wired, and we would begin to interact even with the children in our churches in a way that calls out those creative ways that God has created our kids, and seeing that develop. So yeah, I just want to encourage you that to just go there in your imagination and begin to dream what could happen, what could you breathe on that would just bring life in new and creative ways in your community. So thank you so much for your time today.
Okay, for me, it's a very big challenge to this presentation, you know, about my very basic English. If we add by computer, it is almost overwhelming. The technology is ahead for me, really. And thank you very much. And even that, I am happy to share with you this time. And I am living, maybe you know, El Buen Pastor, United Methodist Church is across from Victory Cleaners. Maybe you pass front here. And I am living next to the church. So when you want to be here, to come here, you are very welcome. And if you like Mexican food, every day there is Mexican food. Okay, but thank you. I would like to say thank you very much to Shirai and Edward for inviting me to participate in this activity. And I hope it is not only an hour and more. It is a start for join together and work together in the name of God. Thank you.
All right. Thank you all so much for your participation, and we just appreciate you. And we're going to go ahead and turn it over to Shate.
Hello. I just have to thank you, Edward Lewis, for facilitating and doing an excellent job. And for our panelists as well, I have to share that I feel like I'm amongst friends and family. And so definitely Reverend Esperanza opened up her church for us to come over. And although I knew it would be a stretch with having a 10-month-old and everything, we couldn't turn that down. We wanted to be here in her space here at El Buen Pastor in San Marcos. And I can't share enough about Pastor Lauren. She is our pastor, one of our pastors. And I also consider her as a friend and supporter of just the work that, and seeing the vision that God has given me. And as we begin to take this forward, I'm just so appreciative for you. And I'm looking forward to us bringing you on the board in December. So thank you so much for graciously accepting that invitation. And also thank you, Pastor Corey. I'm gonna call you Pastor because you've been one of my pastors as well. And in a formative part of my life, when I was very naive and a young adult, even though we're close in age, God really has used you to help me and help me to see my value and my worth and see, and I believe my experience through the ministry that we were a part of and all of that has informed where I'm at today. And so I just truly thank God for each one of you being on this panel and helping to support this vision. And also, I want to thank our guests and attendees, those who are online, those who are here in Zoom, as well as on Facebook. Want to thank you for participating as well. I want to thank our external evaluator, Rosillo Pedroso. She's online making sure that we dot all of our I's and cross our T's this week. This is the third day. I told my husband this morning, I said, what possessed me to throw on a 2.5-day summit? but there was so much information. And so as I go into these closing remarks, there's so much information that we covered, and it was really a great sanity check in terms of looking at the goals that we've had over the past 2.5-3 years and seeing a lot of it come into fruition. It's been a great experience. I apologize for the video. I'm trying to figure out this glare situation, so just work with it. And then also, I need to thank as well Lydia Dobbins. She came on board this week to help me with the summit and to serve as a program manager. And thank you, Pastor Lauren, for lending her over our way to help out as well. You've been a great blessing to the success of the summit. And then also, let me pull up the panelists. I could go one by one and name everyone, but for the sake of time, I'm not going to do that. I just want, and Algie, she's not here, but Algie also serves as a program coordinator, and she's been a great help as well and supporter. And there's so many. And thank you for the inaugural Access Network members as well. And so I'll have to call out Sozo Church, Julie Holler with San Marcos Youth Service Bureau as well. And there are others, but those are highlighted today. And so, and I want to thank Mama T. I understand that my mother in love is online listening in from from Rockford, Illinois. So thank you so much, Mama T, for your support. So thank you, thank you, thank you. And just so many things. In terms of the final questions that were submitted, number one, does the network have a strategic plan? I want to share my screen and share with you just a few slides that I presented on yesterday. And so that will help to address some of the questions that we have. Can you see my slide deck okay? Okay, great. So first of all, ACCESS started off as a design and development launch pilot funded by the National Science Foundation. They have a program and that basically encouraged partnerships on a larger systemic scale where you have different models across the nation. And so we were one of 70 projects that was funded within the San Marcos community. So over the past 2.5 years, we've been working on building the ACCESS network. And so the ACCESS network, basically, we had 3 main goals as part of our strategic plan. And so our strategic plan as the research project and a design and development launch pilot was to create the infrastructure for the ACCESS network, design and develop the ACCESS model, which utilizes university, community, and faith-based assets, and then to promote and disseminate this model on a national scale. So large vision here. Starting here in San Marcos and in our region in Central Texas, with the goal of expanding and scaling it beyond. So our partnership, it is a university community partnership. So researchers from Texas State, including myself, we've been working in collaboration with faith-based and community leaders locally. We also have developed this coalition. And so that includes our activators and includes action researchers and advocates. So our action researchers, basically myself, and I have 2 co-principal investigators who have assisted me with the research part of this project. And then we've had some advocates. So Texas State University is an advocate. We have industry supporters, community leaders, and so on. And then the activators. And so Sozo Church, as well as YSB and others, Pentecostal Temple. Those organizations have served as activators in the community to help develop a K through 12 or K through 12 informal STEM enrichment camp. So we've just focused on summer camp, but the goal is also to expand to focus on after school programs as well. And so we have developed this ACCESS model based on the research. And so the model provides guiding principles. And so we have not yet developed a full-blown curriculum, but we have been focused on what are some resources and assets that we can provide to our network members to help them incorporate those into their existing youth programming. And so one collaboration I've been discussing is for the STEM VBS that Sozo Church created. We want to work with Sozo Church to share that curriculum with other organizations and be able to share a model that was successful during the pilot like 2 summers ago. So that is part of that. And then this is just some of the impact that we've made, but most importantly is being able to work with organizations and help build capacity by giving them resources, giving in terms of funding. Each organization that participated received a $1,000 stipend, for example. And so as we go forward, our goal is to be able to, we've hired a grant writer, 212 Catalyst, Deanie Coleman. So she's gonna be working with us in developing collaborative grant proposals so that we can continue to fund each organization and the work that you're doing. And we want to expand upon that as well and include more resources and opportunities to serve youth and families. And so in terms of the strategic plan, that includes cost, benefits, and a timeline for eliminating these negative outcomes. We have an opportunity to do that. We have the groundwork, we have the infrastructure to focus our attention on that. I love what everyone has shared, but in particular, there was talk about how when you are a part of a collaboration, you have the opportunity to expand your reach in the community. Also map out what are those resources, what are some of the gaps where we need to identify how we can insert more resources or more help where it's needed. And so we definitely have an opportunity for that. We don't currently have a strategic plan that focuses on this specifically, but I think that we have a great opportunity. In terms of mapping, this is this slide. And so to date, as I mentioned through our strategic plan, so we focus on the first three. So forming the inaugural Access Network, designing and developing the Access model, and then piloting that model. And so as we go forward, we want to continue the work here in San Marcos. We want to continue to build upon what we've done, continue to add on new partners. We're conducting a train the trainer or professional development training in the spring, where we have refined the Access model. We've hired a science educator who is familiar with the national standards for science, as well as the TEKS standards statewide. And so we're mapping through our, going through and mapping all of our student learning outcomes to those standards, so that when we train our activators in the spring, all you have to do is plug those into your curriculum and build around that. So we'll provide those as well. So really excited about working with Dr. Sandra West on that. And then other opportunities is for us to go into new communities. And so after our asset mapping activity yesterday, I got an email from a potential new partner that wants us to come into their community and help them map out the assets that they have as well. So that's also an opportunity as we move forward. And then looking to pilot the model in new communities and in new contexts as well. So that's what we have going on. So it's time to wrap up. All right. And so so basically, where do we go from here? As I mentioned, there's an opportunity for us to continue to expand, but also we want you to join this movement. We want you to come on board with us. And so one way to do that is to plug in. If you didn't get a chance to register for this summit, you can go to our website, ACCESS with a Y, so ACCEYSS.org, and subscribe to our newsletter so that you can be informed of the professional development training and the things that we will continue to offer. We will provide quarterly gatherings where we can meet online and network as well. In addition, we're going to provide the slides and all of the resources that our speakers have provided us in a workbook. And so if you would like that workbook and also access to the recorded sessions, you can upgrade your registration to $40. And really that's just a small investment for what you will gain. As I mentioned, as being a member of the network, you have the opportunity to receive grant writing support and be a part of collaborative grant proposals. Also, the opportunity to network and share with other organizations. And then finally, just the benefit of supporting a vision that has the potential to help encourage and include more Black and Brown youth in STEM and also help families. And so we hope that you will join us and continue to be connected. Thank you, Lydia, for the reminder. We also have a Facebook group as well, where we encourage you to follow us there. And we just added a LinkedIn group because some of us prefer to be on LinkedIn and network there. So that opportunity is also available. So final thank yous. I want to thank our sponsors. I want to thank Texas State Organization Workforce and Leadership Studies, the department in which I work for at Texas State. I want to thank the biology department, and as well as Rural Capital Area Workforce Solutions. So thank you again for being a part of the summit. Thank you to our panelists for being a part. Thank you, Edward. And we look forward to seeing you online with us in the near future. Thank you, and have a great rest of your weekend.